Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. Another great episode for you today. Hope you're having a wonderful week so far. So today's guest is Jeff LeBrun. He is the co-founder of a company called Pillsy. The website is pillsy.com. That's Pillsy.com. You can check out the website while you're listening to this episode. Pillsy is, in their infancy for sure. Jeff and his partner started working on the concept back in 2014. With prototypes and whatnot, sort of launched the company in 2015. They were fulfilling small volume orders in 2016, but for the most part, they didn't really start shipping larger orders and getting into commercial accounts until this year, so 2017. They've raised about $500,000 from some angel investors. They actually went through 500 startups. The team is still small, about 5 full-time people, but then they have some part-time people and advisors as well. So the number's probably closer to 10. But let's welcome Jeff to the show. Jeff, how are you, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
You got it. So you're in a very exciting city, Seattle. Seattle's become, one of these destinations for small and large companies and entrepreneurs. So before we talk about Pillsy, just kind of give us a little overview of what's been happening in Seattle the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's blowing up. I'm a native of the Pacific Northwest, grew up in Oregon. And, during this time of year, Seattle's great. I think growing really quickly right now. I saw an article on the newspaper the other day that said that we still have the most cranes out of any city in the country. So it's kind of a crazy time. It's like the gold rush of the old days.
Wow. Okay, so talk to us about Pillsy. What exactly does this company do?
Yeah, so Pillsy it's a medication coaching platform. So we have a Bluetooth-based smart pill bottle. We have a mobile app, and then we have kind of some back-end software for pharmacies and other healthcare providers. And so for the user, what Pillsy does is the bottle automatically tracks doses and sends reminders when you need it. For healthcare, we provide access to that information so they can reach out to the right people at the right time. I initially thought of it, years ago. So I guess starting in 2009, I was working for a coastal ventures startup called SACD3 that developed a new battery technology. And we were starting to work with some of the wearable companies even before they launched their products. So I've kind of been following, the evolution of Bluetooth and lithium-ion batteries for quite some time. Was interested in the technology, and then started doing some consulting work for some people in healthcare at the University of Michigan. And I learned about medication adherence. At the same time, I got a prescription for my first allergy pill and realized that I was just horrible at taking it, but also that I wasn't the only person. Actually, people only remember to take their pills less than 50% of the time in the US. And I was astounded to learn that it's actually a $300 billion plus healthcare problem. So I started to work on it a couple years later.
Yeah, so I mean, earlier today I did a Google search and I searched how many people use medications, and the number is staggering. This says 70% of Americans are on at least one prescription drug. And I would think some of these drugs are very serious to their health and their livelihood. I have family members that have diabetes or heart conditions or other diseases, I guess, that require them to take medication every day. And forgetting to take it 1 or 2 days could be, catastrophic, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's this perception, typically somebody thinks of pills and they think of like their aging grandmother. But the reality is, yeah, like you mentioned, over 70% of people take medications. It's totally normal. It's just not something that people tend to talk about with their friends.
Right. So who is the market here? I mean, is it millennials because, we want smart everything, or is it the older people that maybe have a greater possibility of forgetting to take their medication? Like, who are you guys really marketing this to?
So right now, we've been finding it's been a wide variety of people. We're kind of targeting, say, people that take less than 8 medications right now, which is the majority of people. And we're targeting people that want to use technology. So whether they're, a 70-year-old baby boomer that has a smartphone and that they already own a Fitbit, which is actually a lot of people, or a millennial that's, taking a vitamin or something for ADHD. it's a common problem that a lot of people have.
So does this work? What types of bottles would this work with? And I mean, every morning I wake up and I probably take 15 different pills. Everything from allergy to heartburn to fish oil and flaxseed oil and B12 and this and that. Like, would I need a separate bottle for each one?
Some people use a separate bottle for each one. So we have discounts for multi-packs. Other people find, if you take them all at the same time of day, just using a couple bottles might be sufficient to provide the reminder and the tracking. Typically, if you remember to take one thing at 8 a.m., you're not going to forget to take the rest of it.
Right. But then I guess where it gets tricky is when you have to start taking things 2 or 3 times a day, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have, one batch of thing in the morning, one at night, you might want 2 bottles. Each bottle can store multiple reminders. So, technically you could get by. And it's flexible enough that, you could start trying one and then upgrade if you like the experience.
Right, right. So the prices, it looks like the smart medication bottle is $45. The smart vitamin bottle is $45. How did you guys determine the pricing? Did you guys do any sort of a market test or, small focus group? Or, I mean, I'm always curious to know how companies come up with their pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of things. We did some, surveys. We did some discussing with people. Actually, had a number of different large retailers reach out and tell us the pricing that they thought would work well. And then, some of it's also based on your costs. Having a hardware product, you can't charge less than your cost,
Right, right.
unless you have some really unique thing about your business.
Unless
So
you're
yeah,
Amazon, unless you're Amazon for the first 15 years of existence.
yeah, exactly. Unless if you have public investors supporting you no matter what, but that's not every company.
So what was involved in the very beginning? I mean, from turning this, as an idea in your head into a prototype, what was the process?
Oh man, it was interesting. I was taking a class in user experience research and design at the time. So I made it a class project, even though I kind of knew it was something that I wanted to keep working on. So I did a lot of user interviews. I think I talked to over 100 pharmacists before we actually started making the first prototypes. And that was part of how we arrived at this solution. There are a number of different kind of spins on simplifying medication, the act of taking a medication, from $1,000 pill dispensers to whatever. We wanted something that was just really easy to use, inexpensive, and that kind of fit people's existing habits as much as possible. So we did that, and then I teamed up with some different engineers that I knew or had worked with in the past, and we initially just started making prototypes for fun because we wanted to, see that it could be done. We didn't form the company until I actually checked it by some regulatory consultants and with the FDA and made sure that we wouldn't be regulated as a medical device before anybody invested too much money into it.
Right, right. Okay, good point. Did you guys, were there any patents out there that you guys had to get around?
Yeah, so we definitely looked at the IP before we got started. What's interesting is no one's really done this with Bluetooth before, which meant that actually we did have to kind of develop some new technologies and methods for doing things that we weren't familiar with. But it also meant that the IP was a little bit more clear.
Right. Okay. Did you guys have to file a patent yourselves?
Yeah, we filed some IP.
Okay.
So we have some stuff that's public and published and some that's still not public.
I'm in the process of doing it now, and it is certainly not a cheap process. A lot of money goes into IP protection.
Oh yeah, it can. So what I had some training in IP when I was with the Coastal Ventures company, and one thing I like to start with is start by filing a provisional patent to kind of set your date. Sometimes you find out months later that what you thought was the right solution was almost the right solution, but not quite, or maybe it wasn't. And so what that does, it allows you to file for only a couple $100 to buy you that extra year.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. So go back to the prototype. So once you guys had a working prototype, you got the Bluetooth aspect to work. You guys then had to go build a mobile app, and then you had to get the molds done, I assume, and find a contract manufacturer, right? So how did you find the right contract manufacturer, and do you still work with them?
We do, yeah. So they've been great so far. Yeah, I mean, it was a process. So, initially we had a 3D printer, and we probably went through 50 or so iterations on that. I think we went through 7 or 8 different circuit board designs.
Wow.
And the entire time we were building the mobile app, but also building really this core software platform for optimizing battery, on the device, syncing it to the app, syncing it to the cloud, and then having the logic that they all kind of seamlessly sync with one another whenever they're in range. And on top of that, we're getting like a 1-year battery life off of a watch battery. So there's actually, most of the work we've done has been on the software around being able to do that. But manufacturing did add a lot of time and kind of another challenge. We did 2 things to get started. The first is we just started reaching out to people online. There's a platform called HW Trek that actually makes it pretty easy to do that for any new hardware entrepreneurs that just want to start talking to manufacturers and get an idea of what the costs and timelines look like.
What's it called?
HWTrek.com.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it's kind of like a platform for networking with anybody that needs to help you take your product from a prototype to production. So there's contract manufacturers, there's operations consultants, there's regulatory consultants. A large percentage of them are based in Asia, as you might expect. But what it does is it provides a little bit of structure for finding people that you can work with. Another option would be just to go on Alibaba and look for people that are making something that you think is similar to yours. But actually, the group that we ended up working with, we got connected to through personal connections. Actually, I forgot to mention, but we went through a program called Hacks Boost as well. It's not really the same as the Hacks program, but it's kind of like a smaller version of that. Hacks is the first and largest hardware accelerator. They actually send every single company to Shenzhen, China to get started. We didn't do that, but we were able to kind of leverage their network to find a manufacturer that worked really well with us.
What's the most complicated part about working with a contract manufacturer? I had to do it when I used to own a supplement company, and there were some pros and cons, which I won't get into right now, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
So I think the pro is that they've been pretty good to work with. They provided a lot more engineering resources than we expected when we started. And I kind of found out afterwards that we probably could have been not quite as far along as we were with our prototypes before we started working with them. The most difficult part with this product is we do have moving parts, and so there's the tolerances are pretty important, and so iterating with somebody who's overseas on that just took a while. They would make parts with the mold. It would look well, everything would look pretty well. Then we'd bring it back to the US and test it, and maybe it'd be like 80% good.
Right.
But we didn't want to ship 80% good. So, we ended up taking
just a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, a few extra months to perfect that.
Right. Okay. Have you guys been over there? I mean, have you had to visit the manufacturing facility?
We haven't. They've been here several times. So fortunately, one of the people that we work with who kind of manages it and is an owner of this company is based in Vancouver. So we've met him here, and then his partner actually goes to San Francisco very frequently. So they were able to see all of that and communicate back to the team in China on what needs to be done.
Cool.
And then we use a lot of videos, Skype. So, would I rather be there? Yeah, absolutely. But when you're going through, a 9-month development process with them, for me, it just wasn't possible to be in China that entire time.
Now, when you guys raised the money from the angels, about 500,000 is what you told me in the pre-call. What was the stage of the company? I mean, were you guys still an idea? Did you have prototypes? Had you started shipping? Like, I'm always curious to know when because every company raises money at a different point. Some investors want to see a little bit more traction than others. What did you have to show your investors at the time?
So for the first investors, it was really a 3D printed prototype and a skeleton app. And then over time, it got much better to something that, looked and felt like a finished product for the angels that came in later.
Okay.
But yeah, we definitely had, we didn't raise any money until we had something that was working, and where I had people that told me that, they would pay for the product if it was totally finished.
Okay. No, I think that's becoming more and more true nowadays. Is investors are no longer just putting money into ideas. They expect there to be some sort of a prototype or some sort of traction, customer demand, whatever it might be, to show that there's actually a market for this thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think even for the earliest stage investors, they all want to see traction, even the accelerators. And if you have, hardware or other things that add to your development costs, that can be difficult to do, unless you do a Kickstarter like pre-order campaign, which for us we decided wasn't a very good fit. Just it doesn't tend to work as well for health focused products. So yeah, we've just had to be scrappy instead.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are sort of, you're kind of a consumer healthcare product, but I mean, I can see some people getting pretty excited about it. But yeah, I mean, it's those campaigns are, many times they're hit or miss, and the ones that hit it big, it's because they're spending a ton of money on advertising, to push traffic to it. So, it's not like they're raising $20,000 and not spending any money. They're
Oh yeah, no, they're plowing it all back into Facebook ads, and in order to make that work, typically it works better if your product costs, say, $200 or more, just because you have a lot more profit to reinvest into those ads.
true. Yep. What's been your favorite part about going through 500 startups and being a 500 startup portfolio company?
I mean, I think it's definitely the other founders, getting to work side by side with, a bunch of people that are just as passionate about their business as you are about yours, incredibly smart people. That's great. When you've been working, not out of the Bay Area, and you don't have as much of a community of support around you, to be, side by side with people like that for a few months, it's really a treat.
What's next for the company? I mean, I know I mentioned in the intro that you guys have started shipping larger orders this year. So I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean you're working with distributors or retailers? What kinds of larger orders are you guys anticipating?
Yeah, so we've had, actually a pretty decent amount of retail interest, even more than I expected when we started out. But probably what's more exciting, for us at least, is to start working directly with people in healthcare. So, I mentioned that 300 billion number. I think, it's our belief that in order to truly make a difference in that, we need to be more fully integrated into the workflow of pharmacies and doctors. And so we've seen interest from that. And so we're starting to launch some kind of small programs with pharmacies, in some cases, probably some pharmaceutical companies working with us. And so that's cool, because I think it'll allow us to reach a whole nother level of scale.
What would the idea be that your bottles, or whatever box your bottles were in, would be in the pharmacy section? So someone would go in there, pick up a prescription, see your bottle, and it's just a nice complimentary upsell for the pharmacy.
So typically the pharmacies we're working with right now are not the retail pharmacies that everyone thinks of when they think of a pharmacy. So we're working with pharmacies that either mail or deliver their drugs.
Gotcha.
And oftentimes they're what the industry would refer to as specialty pharmacies, which just means that they're distributing usually more expensive drugs, where taking the drugs correctly actually is often more important too. So things like drugs for cancer or HIV, hepatitis, rheumatoid arthritis, kind of a number of different conditions that don't affect as many people, but where the medication is more important than ever.
Do you think there'll ever be a day? Sorry to cut you off.
But I was going to say, and then, so we started with that, and then we're actually also starting to get interest from more common conditions. So things like cardiovascular disease. And it'll still be through the mail, but it's the same idea that patients will be able to go to our partner pharmacies, get our product for free, because the healthcare system that they're involved with realizes in everyone's interest for them to take their medications. And in some cases, what's also really cool is that we can, because we have data on whether or not they took the drug, we can tie that to rewards. So typically, people pay for at least a portion of their prescriptions, sometimes quite a lot. Well, in some cases, wouldn't it be great if you could get it for free, or maybe even got paid if you could prove that you were doing a good job? So it's kind of like, the principle of like a good driver discount for medications. But that's only enabled by having a sensor like ours.
Do you think there will ever be a day when insurance companies cover the expense of your bottles?
I've had several of them call me about doing just that already.
So, I mean, what would that mean?
Absolutely. Oh, pardon?
I mean, that'd be a pretty huge moment, right? I mean, if you guys were able to get coverage by people's insurance insurance plans to cover the expense of Pillsy or some reduced cost, I would assume that would help, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the percentage of people that want to use this product, if their insurance company pays for it, or even if you get it for free plus maybe $20 or $40 a month, if you can prove that you've been taking your blood pressure medication, that starts to align everybody.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, I mean, we've had over 15 Fortune 500s reach out to us about demoing or piloting or getting involved in the sales process. I think it will take a while just because of the nature of some of these companies. So we're trying to find kind of pockets of people that are willing to be early adopters, but within healthcare. And so far we've been able to do that, but we're just getting started.
So how are you guys getting your product in front of the right consumers? I mean, I came across, I think it was maybe a Facebook ad or PR. I mean, I forget how I heard about you guys, but that's when I reached out and set up this interview. But how are you guys, driving traffic to your website?
Primarily, we just had one initial kind of PR boost over a couple weeks. And since then, it's been more or less organic. We bought some Facebook ads, but I haven't been investing a lot in those lately. We've been mostly in trying to prove out our unit economics, and then we'll raise more money to fund more marketing. But at this point, we haven't invested a ton into marketing.
Are Facebook ads, how do they convert for you guys? Have they been successful when you do them?
Yeah, I think they've been pretty successful. I think we could do a little bit more to optimize them given the price point of our product, but we were more or less like breaking even on the ads.
What's been the biggest surprise for you guys thus far? I mean, I guess you've been working on this for about 3 years, but the first 2 years of that was spent, product development, prototyping, etc. So, since you guys have had your, whenever the final product was ready to go, since that point, what's been the biggest challenge?
I mean, it's not a small technical effort. Part of that's the way that we decided to do it. But yeah, I mean, we have, I think, 5 different pieces of software all working in harmony right now. Doing that with a small team is pretty difficult. So the guys I'm working with are, very talented, very committed, and they've just each done jobs of like 2 to 3 different people. But I think pulling off Internet of Things health tech startup with angel level financing is something that I haven't seen that many other people do.
When do you guys think you'll raise your next round of funding? Is it on the roadmap yet?
Yeah, I think it'll be this fall. We're approaching cash flow positive right now, just because our team is small. And what I'm hoping to do is get some more metrics in from these pharmacies and other healthcare providers that we're working with, and use that to raise a nice round this fall.
Do you think it'll be harder or easier to raise your A than it was your seed?
I think if we have good results in specialty pharmacy, it's not going to be that difficult based on what I've heard.
I mean, okay, right. I mean, I would agree, right? If you have the metrics and the traction to prove out your, your thesis or whatever it might be. I mean, I think that's kind of the value. That's the point of the seed. Develop the product, get it to market, get some traction, prove that there's a viable market here, and then the A. I would think the Series A investors would jump on it. Do you have any particular VC firms that you're going to approach the A, that you really like to work with?
I made a target list a few months ago, and then we've had some that have reached out to us. But I haven't updated that for a couple months, so I don't have any specifics off the top of my head.
And who would you say who's the next big hire for you guys? What position are you looking to fill soon?
Well, I think we're going to need to add a few more people to our technical team just to kind of keep up support of the product once we start getting more users. So I think we need an Android engineer, and then at some point we'll need to hire probably a dedicated biz dev person with a little bit of a Rolodex in this industry.
Right. Okay. So I mean, who's doing mostly the sales now? Who's reaching out to potential distributors or partners? Is that founders?
It's primarily been myself, and then a lot of it's inbound. We also have some angel investors that are extremely well connected, and so some of it's come through them as well.
What was the key for you guys in finding angel investors?
Initially, the first few people were just people that I knew that I had worked with in the past. And then we had a group of doctors come in. I have one of my best friends is an ER physician. And he brought in a group of guys that he had worked with who thought it was a great concept. So some of the people I didn't know, they just came in through that network.
What's one skill, coming into this this journey as an entrepreneur? What's one skill or trait that you lacked that you've been, focused on improving or building?
Oh God, probably selling. I guess I've sold in the past, but it's always been more of like the consulting type sale, and to some degree, I've still been doing that, but I don't have like a true sales process set up yet.
How have you tried? So you've been trying to become a better salesperson then?
My style is typically more to develop the product to meet the customer's needs. I like to be at that stage. And so, that's what we've been doing. So for me, it's always a combo of listening and developing and trying to make sure that they get what they want. I'm not as good at just, presenting my solution to the world and asking them to take it.
Right.
Fortunately, we're not really at that stage yet, but, there's times when you need to do that. And, specifically in healthcare, there's certain things that people expect. So, I think we've done okay, but when we get, a couple more people that have a decade of experience doing that, it's just going to help that much more.
And last question here. If you look back over the last couple of years, what's one thing that you guys did wrong? And then one thing that you guys did really right?
Wrong. So I think, looking back, there's a lot of technical decisions that we've made or paths that we went down that, maybe if we'd done something differently, we could have shaved a couple months here or there. In reality, that's always a lot more clear when you're looking backwards than when you're looking forwards. But I think if we did it again, we could do it twice as fast. What we did right, I think one thing that we did right is before we finalized our design, our idea for anything, interviewed hundreds of people, gave a survey to a couple hundred more, just to know that you're building something that matters, especially given that, this is kind of a multi-year process and not just like a web app that you can pivot on so quickly.
Right. No, I mean, I give you credit. I think not enough people go out there and talk to the market before they start building something. They build it assuming the market wants it, and then they get out there and maybe no one's actually willing to pay for it. So
Yeah, and in this case, it was kind of doubly important because there's end users. You need to make sure that your users want to use the product. In digital health, there's a million products that have been developed really for the organization, and then they have horrible user retention. But you also need to make sure that there's people that are willing to pay for it.
right.
So we had to have triple the number of conversations to probably figure that out.
Well, that's pretty much all I got for you, man. Did I skip over anything that you wanted a chance to mention?
I don't think so. If you're listening to this and it's past August, come to our website because we're going to have a couple new announcements and partnerships that will be spinning up that might even be more interesting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll publish this in the next few days, but I'll continue to promote it, and it'll always be on the website so people can find it and listen to it anytime they want. And then certainly let me know what those announcements are, and I'd be happy to put them in our newsletter or into our Twitter feed. So in terms of finding you guys online, obviously pretty easy. Like I said before, Pillsy.com. And then in terms of social media, do you guys use any particular platform?
We're on Facebook primarily, and it's Facebook/Pillsy app.